Well, welcome back, everyone. And if you remember yesterday, we took a look at just an overview of HR. Today, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Today, we're going to start looking at some of the challenges that HR faces, and there are many. And if you remember yesterday, we talked about globalization, technology, and diversity. And today, we're going to see some of the challenges that these three elements present. So sit back, and I hope you enjoy the presentation and keeping up with your reading and all of that. And we'll begin today with the challenges that HR is facing. Well, welcome back, class. Today I want to carry on with Chapter 1 and talk about some of the specifics that we touched on yesterday, especially in light of challenges that are facing HR today. Some of the challenges that human resource management faces deal with competition, cost pressures, and restructuring. Also, globalization is a major challenge. It's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge as well. A changing workforce poses a fairly significant challenge to organizations, and as a result, HR, and then human resource and technology. So let's break these down and look at them individually. First of all, we have competition, cost pressures, and restructuring. Now, there's no doubt competition is keen in most all industries today. As you take a look at the types of industries out there and the ever-growing population, well, that population has needs and desires that it wants fulfilled, and organizations exist to fulfill those needs. So as a result, you're going to have changing demands. Now, this is what they call job shifts, or these demands result in job shifts. As your slide indicates and as your textbook indicates, the highest percentage shift in higher education jobs right now involve degreed positions in healthcare. Healthcare, there's always going to be a demand for it, but there are constant shifts and percentages in higher education jobs that involve specifically healthcare professionals. But also, there are shifts in lower education jobs. The demand for bricklayers, nurses' aides, as you see in the textbook, there's a demand for that's growing. But I want you to pay particular attention also to what we call skill shortages. And this is an inadequate supply of workers with the skills needed to perform the emerging new jobs. Now, not so much new jobs, but also jobs that have been around that have waned because of the lack of interest in these types of jobs. For instance, heating and air conditioning. The demand for them right now is phenomenal. The demand for court reporters, of all things, is phenomenal. My wife is getting her certification and degree in court reporting, and she's going to be making twice the amount when she gets her degree than I made when I got mine, because there is a lack of court reporters. There's a lack of mechanics. There's a lack of truck drivers. There's a lack of many of these professions that have gone by the wayside because most people are getting their degrees right now in the higher education realm that require bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and even doctorates and PhDs. And let's take, for instance, HR in and of itself. The key today in human resource management is to not only get your degree, but get an advanced degree, such as your master's degree. And not only get a master's degree, but to be certified in different aspects of human resource management. Why? Because the market's becoming saturated with them. So many people now, because we have easy access to education, more adults are getting their degrees, and many of them today are getting their degrees in organizational development and HR management and so forth because it's an interesting field. But there are only so many opportunities to go around. So instead of getting major degrees, most employers and most advisors today are telling people we need to return back to the vocational type of career fields because they are becoming more and more in demand. But as that shift occurs, you as an HR professional are going to have to accommodate these shifts. You're going to have to look at maybe a less than robust job field to be able to go in and find the biggest and the brightest and the best for your organization. And as the demand changes, so too will your strategies in being able to staff your organization. So job shifts, skill shortages, those are some major pressures that are prevalent today in HR management. Now globalization. Now globalization, and I'll just put it all up here, is the integration of global operations, management, and strategic alliances. Now here you see the term expatriate. An expatriate is the citizen of one country working in a second country and employed by an organization headquartered in that first country. Now, to give you an example, let's say, for instance, Mid-America wanted me to go and manage a campus in Beijing, China. Me going over there would make me an expatriate. I'm leaving my home country to go and manage our organization in a foreign land. Now, these strategies of sending Americans over to other cultures or having other cultures come to America and work, they are rife with problems. For one thing, and probably the major thing, is the problem of culture shock. I'm used to the American way of life. I'm used to, if I want to get up at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock and make a run for the border and get a taco or something like that, or go get some gas or go get a soda, most stores are open, or a lot of the stores are open, and I can do that. But what about those countries that don't even have a Taco Bell or even have gas stations that are readily available? Some countries you'll live out in the jungle because they're so remote. So normally when a person goes overseas, and I experienced this in the military, usually when you go overseas, the first week or two, it's great. You're sightseeing, you're exposed to new things. But as you start to get used to that environment, you start to miss some of the things that you had at home. Again, when you wake up in the middle of the night and realize that there's nothing for you to go and do, or nothing to satisfy maybe a craving or whatever, though that's when the reality of you no longer being at home hits. And this is what we call culture shock. Also, too, the different cultures in which you may have to involve yourself are different. Some cultures, as we mentioned last term or last time in week 1 Tuesday, some countries are very masculine. Some countries are more collectivist. And these go against what we are used to as far as dealing with people. So the types of workers that you're going to be dealing with. Also, wage is an important consideration. Now, the good thing about going overseas is that the value and the power of the dollar is usually very strong in most of these other countries. So you may, on your salary as a manager, live like a king in a place, let's say the Philippines. I knew a lot of military people who retired in the Philippines. They didn't make much based on American standards. So instead of retiring in America, they went to the Philippines, and their little retirement check was able to get them a massive house with land and servants and so forth. So you may live like that when you go overseas. But what happens when you come back? and that $50,000 salary or $60,000 salary just doesn't buy as much in the States as it did when you were in the Philippines. That's a big adjustment that you have to make. So being able to adjust to the wages, the economic systems, the political systems, and when we talk about the political systems, we also talk about, and we mentioned it yesterday, about how turbulent some of these places are, where they can be taken over at a moment's notice unexpectedly, and all of a sudden you've lost everything, and you don't have the protection of the government because the government no longer exists. So globalization is a major consideration when it comes to the challenges that confront HR today. Now this is just a diagram, figure 1.7, of the relative comparison of workers and their wages, and take a look at the difference between Australia and the Philippines. I mean, Australia, they live well. They are paid fairly well. But now you also have to question what type of economic system are they under. If they're under a socialist economy, then they're probably taxed very heavily on everything. So the cost of living is probably tremendous, as opposed to, let's say, America, where we live in a capitalist society, and even under a capitalist society, we don't make too bad. This is back in 2012, so back then the average manufacturer was making $35.67. Now, I have never seen that here in the South. To be able to justify or to be able to reinforce that figure, they may be looking at the North or the West, but still in all, American workers do make well. But look at how they rank in comparison to maybe France or Germany or Australia. Now again, with globalization, you have legal and political factors. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some companies in some countries have lost everything because the government was taken over and the company could not rely upon the State Department or America to recoup their losses. It's just a risk that people have to take. But you also have legal issues as well. You have to make sure that when you're in that host country, you have to adhere and abide by all of the laws that that country puts out and enforces. And there was a situation back, I would say about 10, 15 years ago, where a manager took his family overseas. It was in the Orient, and the son of this manager dropped something, I think it was bubble gum or some type of paper, and littered the ground in that city or in that town. And their punishment for that was caning, where they would take you out in public and strip you down and beat you with a bamboo cane. That was their form of punishment for that type of offense. And the State Department was up in the air. Of course, the company and the manager, the family, they were all up in the air, but it still didn't sway the government. They carried forth that punishment. So you have to be careful when you're in different areas to make sure you know the law. And overseas is just like America. They'll tell you ignorance is no excuse. So the legal and political factors are a major concern when it comes to globalization. Now, with the type of diversity in the workplace, if you remember, yesterday I told you that we had racial, which is diversity, we have technology, and we have globalization. Diversity means every and all walks of life. There's racial and ethnic diversity that we have to deal with today. There's gender in the workforce. There's aging in the workforce. So when it comes to racial and ethnic diversity, how do you get a group of Muslims and Christians and Jews in an organization to work together? How do you bring about something as simple as maybe having a Christmas party, because if you have a Christmas party, now you've offended the Muslims. Now you've offended the Jews. Now, are you going to have Ramadan, and are you going to allow them to pray, the Muslims, 5 times a day? So these are some considerations that you have to make. Gender in the workforce. As we have gotten into this idea of transgender and no gender and all of that, think about the complexities of you just being able to provide a safe, harassment-free workplace for people who just don't identify with the gender at all. How are you going to devise a way for them to even go to the bathroom? How are you going to address them? Sir, ma'am, and so forth. So if you get it wrong, you run the risk of litigation. So gender in the workforce. Also, you have within gender the idea of this glass ceiling and pay disparity between males and females. So gender presents a lot of challenges for HR. And then you have aging in the workforce. And as I mentioned yesterday, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act forbids anyone from discriminating against individuals who are 70 and below, 70 and above. So it used to be 40 years old, but now it's 70 years old. So as that 30-year span has been extended, you see here a very aging workforce. And if they're not leaving, what opportunities are going to be there for the younger people who are trying to come up in the organization? And how are those who are coming out of our colleges today going to find positions in organizations today? And with the people who are in the workplace, who are older, how are you going to make a safe workplace for them? How are you going to be able to develop competitive, comprehensive medical plans, insurance for them, and so forth? So these are some issues that you're going to be dealing with when it comes to diversity in the workplace. Now, technology, as we considered yesterday, is a growing influence in organizations today. It does help in many areas of the organization, especially in HR, as many of the mundane administrative duties have been taken over now by technology. We don't have to pull out paperwork and so forth. We don't have to go back in files and look through a person's work record and all of that. Today, technology has all of that work completed for us and so forth. But how do you reconcile technology and worker cohesion? How do you keep a motivated workforce when technology is slowly creeping in and replacing them? So there are going to be some advantages, but there are also challenges with technology as well. And as you see here, it helps in strategic HR planning. It improves administration and operational efficiency. It supports recruiting, selection, and training. And it also contributes to organizational performance through collection and analysis of HR-related data. And these are just some of the bullet points that the slide points out. But believe me, the benefits and the challenges, some of the technology trends today, everything that you people are using, mobile devices, and you'll be social media that as you go out into the professional world. When it comes to the way that we use technology today, many organizations, before they even consider hiring you, they're going to look at your Facebook page. They're going to look at your social media pages to see what type of person you are. Now, what do you think about that? How does it make you feel that people can look at your Facebook page and determine whether or not they want to hire you? A lot of times, people can really get to know you, the real you, just by the people that you interact with. And social media has opened up an opportunity for us to be able to go and see just what type of person you are, whether you belong to hate groups or what type of affiliations that you have. Social media has been a tremendous asset and resource for HR to be able to go in and take a look at a complete person when they apply for a job. Mobile devices, they're there. They are a benefit, but they can also be a challenge when you have people who are spending more time on their cell phones than they are working. That's an issue. When you have people texting instead of talking between each other, that's going to influence the cohesion of the organization. So technology trends. Technology is not going anywhere, but as it grows in the organization, we need to be able to leverage it as an organizational asset instead of allowing it to take away from productivity and also cause disharmony within organizations. Well, class, as you can see, HR faces numerous difficulties. And as we saw at the beginning yesterday, why do organizations need HR? Well, we've seen today just a few of the examples of the reasons why organizations need HR. And I hope that what you've taken you can apply right now in your ministry, because HR does deal with ministries just as much as it does with organizations. So I hope that you've been able to glean some information today that's going to help you, if nothing else, just to appreciate HR and this profession. And I'll see you tomorrow.